Good morning to you. Mark's out of HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. Now it is, what is today? Wednesday, August 28th. And I am in Ponce down in Puerto Rico. Beautiful morning here. Off to my south and east are the clouds thickening up towards the Virgin Islands. I'll show you that in a moment on the satellite. I'll bring the camera up just for a minute. Hi, everybody. It is a pretty nice day out here. And in fact, let me just grab the laptop. I'll take you outside real quick and show you. You'll say hi to Brent for a second. He's out here. The birds are going to get his food if he's not careful. There's the birds. So this is what it looks like outside. Hopefully you can see that. The clouds in the distance. There's Brent enjoying a... Leave me alone, he says. No wind at all. It's kind of muggy. The ocean there, nice and calm for the most part. And there's the morning birds. All right, first time I've ever been able to do something like that on the update. That's pretty cool. Bring you back, and let's get on with the business at hand. Let me close the door so the birds don't come in. All right, so we have a lot to talk about here, obviously, with Dorian. Plug the laptop back in. I'm going to get rid of the camera and get on with the program. First, Tropical Storm Erin. Don't want to ignore this. It's not the best organized system, which is obviously good news, but it will bring some impacts up here into Atlantic Canada. Also, waves and some rip current threats along the coast of the United States, moving up into Nova Scotia. We'll look at this on a satellite picture in just a moment, but overall, low to medium impacts. It's not like it's a big Category 3 hurricane coming up out of the tropics. You think about Hurricane Juan. I think that's the name of it. Several years ago, what was that, 03, something like that? It's not like that, okay? And but it will bring some impacts, so certainly be ready for and prepared for that in up in Canada. Let's see, get my pointer back, go back here. Now, for Dorian, overnight, the guidance has shifted just a little bit, and as such, the forecast track this morning at 5 a.m. now keeps the center just offshore of Florida after moving through the Northeast Caribbean today. So we have a couple of things to talk about here. The sort of the nowcast, what's happening now, and what is happening down the road. So we'll start first up here with the wide shot. Oh, let's go back over this way. Wide shot of the Atlantic Basin. There is Dorian. Here is Erin up here. Erin's being plagued by some northerly shear coming down this way from the north, pushing the thunderstorm cluster away from the low-level circulation, which you can see rotating right in here. But the thunderstorms are being blown from north to south. It's interesting how shear works. It's not always something blowing from west to east or east to west. Shear can be from any direction if the stronger winds aloft exceed the storm motion, is shearing it apart. And that'll keep Erin generally weak and disorganized as it moves up along relatively warm water up through here, eventually towards Nova Scotia. Also in the wide shot here, you can see Dorian, fairly well-developed outflow. It's trying to reorganize itself after having sort of a hard time with all that dry air. And now, most indications are that once it passes through the Caribbean here, out of the Caribbean, and into the southwest Atlantic, somewhere over here, that conditions will be very favorable for strengthening. More moisture content, higher humidity in the atmosphere, a warm ocean, you name it, it looks like it's going to be there. The placement of different upper-level lows in the atmosphere to act as ventilating units. A lot of complex features around that could make Dorian a formidable hurricane as it passes through the southwest Atlantic. Looking at a zoomed-in satellite shot of it this morning, still not the best organized system, which is obviously good news, but it's going to bring a lot of rainfall, and that cannot be discounted. And that's spreading. Brent's having a funny time out there with the birds. I wish I could show you that. It's hilarious. I can see him out of the corner of my eye, dealing with all those birds. You gonna be okay, Brent? They're trying to steal his muffin. the rainfall is really the biggest issue here, and that's already spreading over portions of the Northeast Caribbean there, as you can see. And it's interesting because western Puerto Rico may not see very much. It's more up here towards San Juan, over to Humacao, the U.S. British Virgin Islands. That could take a bulk of the energy from Dorian as it passes over today, and the rainfall could be excessive on the order of up to 10 inches in some places. And we saw what that did yesterday down in Martinique and those areas with very heavy rainfall that could lead to flash flooding. So not a big wind maker, obviously, not yet, but the big threat here, rain, gusty winds from time to time, rough local seas, etc. And that'll be spreading across the islands and Puerto Rico here over the next several hours. All right, looking at the computer models. Brent's going to come inside so he can avoid the plague of birds. Aggressive little suckers. All right, so the European last night, this is the 0Z run of the European at the 5,000 foot level of the atmosphere. And you can see that's the reflection of Dorian right there, what we call the vorticity. This is just a way to kind of look at it as if you peeled back the cloud cover and we're looking at the energy below, or the vorticity below, almost kind of like an X-ray of your body. But this is not X-rays, it's just an analogy. And then here is the much larger, more disorganized, well, they're both kind of disorganized, but this is the larger Erin up here to the north and west. So the Euro here on the public site that Levi Cowan makes available at Tropical Tidbits, you get frames every 24 hours. That's just the way the resolution on this particular site works. There are pay sites, such as the weathermodels.us, I think is the address, the weather models site run by Ryan Maui and others. I believe that Weather Bell, where Joe Bastardi is, and his colleagues, they might have more higher resolution European data. But unfortunately, the free stuff is just every 24 hours. But you take what you can get, and I know we all appreciate Levi making this available. So this is the initial map, and you know, certainly keep an eye on what happens with Erin up here, but focus your attention down here too, of course, on Dorian. That's what we're looking at is last night, the initial condition at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. All right? So we move ahead to 8 p.m. tonight. Euro shows the center of Dorian there, the vorticity center, over Puerto Rico. So depending on how this goes, it could be a very stormy, rainy day down here in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And you notice, too, what happens here with Erin moving on up towards the north and east, paralleling the east coast, still rather disorganized. 24 hours later, once again, this would be Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, right into Florida. So that's 5 days out. And you can see what it does there. It does this curve right into Florida, this sort of pinwheel pivoting into Florida, because pretty strong high pressure starts to build in. You can see at the surface here, 1016 millibars, 1020, 1024. We call those isobars. I can't even talk. Lines of equal pressure. And so that's what happens. Erin moves out, high pressure moves in, and blocks Dorian from coming up more to the north. That's what the Euro shows. The GFS at the same time frame, 0Z last night, and this, because this is readily available on the U.S. government site, is every 6 hours. So we use the slider. Watch what happens. Yep, there we go. It comes up, and then it's like, oh, maybe not so much. And let's go back to the 5-day point. That's 5 days on the GFS. That's 5 days on the Euro. Now, this is what I was talking about last night. A lot of people, you don't need me to tell you this, live along the southeast coast. And this is aggravating because you have two different models that are both fairly good, right? They're supposed to be. The ECMWF is regarded as often the best global model. GFS model recently got an upgrade. It's called the FV3 version now. And they are both showing a difference of several hundred miles at day 5. which goes to show you, Dorian roughly would be in here. That's a pretty good distance there. And that shows you that the 5-day error cones that we see, like this, are there for a reason. See that? Now you understand why that's there. Because that is a big, big difference in terms of impact. That's a landfall, millions of people without power. That is millions of people still preparing for a hurricane. And if we forward the GFS on out to day 6, and then day 7, it's on up into North Carolina. What about the Euro at day 7? It's off the coast of Tampa. I mean, now we're talking ridiculous in terms of the difference. Why is there this difference? It's the way that each model is handling the evolution of the ridge out here over the Atlantic. The European is stronger and has more of an influence, keeping Dorian suppressed, trapped down here farther to the south, whereas the GFS model, to put it into simplest terms, has less ridging, a little bit of an escape route right through here. You have a ridge of high pressure out over the Atlantic, another ridge building with very hot weather over Oklahoma and parts of the Midwest. In between is this trough, if you will, this weakness, and Dorian goes into there. Which one's going to be correct? Hey, Brent, if I knew which one was going to be correct, I could fly us home on our own jet, right? And I would tell you, folks, I'm trying to give a little bit of levity to this because it's very serious and it's going to have a lot of people anxious. But I don't know which one's going to be correct. Neither does the National Hurricane Center. All right? And that's why you have this big cone of uncertainty of where the center would be. This tells you nothing about the impacts. It's just where the center would be. That's why we have that. Few things to keep in mind for intensification. Wow, look at this. This is the analysis from the NOAA-NESDIS on the 26th. Sea surface temperature anomalies in the vicinity of where Dorian would possibly be headed. There you go. Taking all these potential tracks into consideration, water temperatures are either right where they should be, generally speaking, or slightly warmer by about 1/4 to 1/2 degree Celsius. Some areas a little warmer, some areas a little cooler, but even 1/2 to a degree Celsius additional Fahrenheit, whatever you want to call it, 2.5, 3 degrees Fahrenheit, is a tremendous amount of more available energy. And I would say that all this additional warm water relative to average up in the North Atlantic, normally you would think that would strengthen the ridge. You remember last year with Florence that it looked like it was going to try to escape, early on, but then the ridge built back in. That was later in September, obviously. But there are some things that I can try to pull out of this and say, well, usually when you have this very warm water up here, the ridge is stronger, and that might tend to favor a more westward turn like the Euro is showing. But that's not always the case. Sometimes the trough energy, you got a big ridge sitting out over the heartland, big ridge over the Atlantic, in between is your escape route. It's just a matter of how much farther to the west does this ridge and south, west and south, extend. It's like a big water balloon that you fill up and it expands, pushing on other water balloons in the area. It's not solids and liquids like a cork in a stream necessarily, but it's more like fluids interacting on each other. So very warm water to take advantage of for sure. Impacts for the area: U.S. British Virgin Islands, heavy rainfall, south and eastern Puerto Rico, 4 to 6 inches, 1/2 foot of rain in short order, up to 10 inches. And that's a big deal. Take that very seriously, and just be prepared if you live. Brent, what do you call the areas? We call them arroyos, or dry riverbeds out west. Rivers, what you call them? Gullies?
Guts.
Guts, that's right. And those fill up with water pretty quick when it rains hard, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so Brent lives in St. John, and he knows about this. So this could be a real big problem. Very heavy rain, almost a foot of rain. Northwestern Puerto Rico, considerably less. And you know what? This all depends, too, on where any particular heavy band sets up as Dorian moves by. Tropical storm conditions expected across the area. Of course, that would make sense. Probably no hurricane winds, and then seas 13 to 15 feet, up to 19 feet in the Caribbean and through the Mona Passage, maybe some breaking waves that could be rather dangerous. And eventually, folks, that energy from Dorian, once it gets into the southwest Atlantic, fast forward to tomorrow and beyond, then you're going to start seeing these swells radiate out and make their way up towards the southeast coast and beyond. And that's going to be a big problem because we are approaching Labor Day weekend. A very, very big problem coming up. Just to reiterate, some of the geographic areas here showed you on the tracking map, but this is what I'm talking about. U.S., British Virgin Islands in here. And right now, St. Kitts and, is it Nevis or Nevis? Nevis, something like that. Over to Anguilla, St. Bart's, those areas getting some, probably some squally weather. But a bulk of this is going to eventually head up through the U.S., British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, San Juan being up on the northeast coast. Depending on how this comes in, they could get a bulk of the action on the eastern side of Puerto Rico. Again, it just depends on how those rain bands set up. By the way, you can go to weather.gov, type it in here for you, weather.gov on the home page. Scroll down if you're interested in Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands. That's right here, and it gives you this local information out of National Weather Service San Juan. All right, so very good information here for not only the U.S., British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, but elsewhere. Weather.gov. Just put in your zip code, and you get a ton of information, and it's free. Well, you pay for it with your taxes anyway. Hey, I wanted to mention a couple of things that are very important real quick. I am needing a couple of these batteries in a big way. So see this link up here. It's Max Oak K2. This is what powers our camera systems. And we talk about crowdfunding. Here's your chance. This is the product. This is what we use for our camera systems. And so if you are in the position to buy one of these or two of these or more, send me an email. I'll put a link to this product in the description of the video. Send me an email. I'll put that as well and let me know, and we can arrange that. I can get you my address, etc. And I think we're going to really need these. And some people were asking about it. If I can help out, how could I do so? So I wanted to show you this. This is what we need most of all, is power, to power our unmanned cameras. So I'll put a link in the description. And if you think you can help out, you want to get one or more, that would be awesome. And also, I am on Patreon, focusing most of my blog and other activity that I usually do on HurricaneTrack.com on Patreon. And it's because I can consolidate everything in what's essentially like a social media type setting here. If these will load, you can see I can post updates. I can interact with people. There's Brent and Carlos that we had dinner last night. Carlos lives up in San Juan. But this is what Patreon looks like. And a lot of the posts are public. But then we also have the posts that are only for patrons, our crowdfunding supporters. And you see those listed down here. They have a little, eventually. There you go. Now, where is it? Trying to see what one of those looks like. I guess, it's because I'm logged into my account. Whatever. This is what it looks like. This is Patreon. I'll put a link to that as well. I'm going to be doing a lot with this, including a new television type series that we're going to put together starting in January 2020, and a podcast beginning in December, all for our patrons no matter what level you are. I call it Included with Patreon, like they have Included with Prime, like on Amazon Prime, right? You've heard of that. Sure. All right, so there you go. A lot going on with Dorian, with Erin, and then the tropics are going to heat up even more after that. I mentioned that last night. I'm starting to see that showing up in the global models. We knew this was coming. Here it is. I hope you're ready. Try not to let it worry you too much. I know that's easier said than done. Look, I have seen some of those model runs too, the GFS, etc., where it brings Dorian up into the Carolinas. It's long enough out in the long range that I'm not worried about it too much. But as a homeowner up there, wife and kids back home, we just went through Florence last year. I know. I'd rather not go through anything like that. It makes it a lot harder for me to do my job, to be quite honest with you. But that notwithstanding, oh, poor old Mark, I definitely have sympathy for what you guys go through. You know, Brent worries about it when he's coming to help me. If he's got to leave the Virgin Islands and something's going to plow through there, luckily, it's just going to be a big rainmaker. But we all understand, okay? So don't sit and just watch models all day. Do other things that are more constructive. If you've got a generator, now's the time to go make sure it's working properly. If you used it before, take it to a small engine shop tomorrow. If you live in the southeast, do stuff like that. Go over your hurricane plan. Make sure I could go pick up a couple of 5-gallon gas cans and fill them up. Get it done now while you have a chance before people start really freaking out, because you know they will. It comes every time. And, of course, we have Labor Day weekend coming up. A lot of people are going to be traveling, and a lot of people are going to be traveling into the area that really aren't tuned in. Oh, I heard something about a storm out there, but I'm not too worried about it. So there's a lot of moving parts to this particular situation. Every one of them is different, and this is no exception. All right, that is it from me. I am Mark Suttle for HurricaneTrack.com. As always, I appreciate you tuning in from whatever device you happen to be doing so from. Remember, check the description of today's video. I'll put a link to the K2 power pack in there, and if you can help out by sending one, that would be awesome. I'll get you my information to ship that to me, and we'll be working on this. Oh yeah, I guess I should mention what my plan is before I sign off. I'll come back on real quick. I almost forgot, Brent. We're leaving. I'm leaving Puerto Rico, fingers crossed, in the next few hours, by the way. We're going to set up a couple of cameras here, and then I'm going to go ahead and head back to Miami, pick up a rental, and get to North Carolina to start getting equipment to get ready for the landfall. Do you get all that? It's crazy. So, yes, I'm going to set up some equipment, and then we're leaving, or I'm leaving. Brent may follow me today. He may go tomorrow. We're going to work it all out. But we cannot get stuck in Puerto Rico. Maybe they close the airport. I mean, who knows? And then we missed the ground game. And I hate calling it that because it makes it sound trivial, but you know what I'm saying. Our ground operation, either in Florida, wherever the case may be, so I got to make sure I'm ready for that. So that's my plan. I will be heading back to Miami in just a few hours. But first, we're going to set up some equipment and make sure things are running down here to capture whatever impacts Dorian brings this way. Now I can sign off. Mark Suttle, HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks for tuning in. I will have another video discussion for you tonight.